Welcome everyone to AN Elder Scrolls Iceberg. Now I don't want to open this with the whole oh gee, I sure hope I'm not late to this trend kind of comment, because I totally am, but people are still making these videos anyways, even though, the trend is, sort of gone by. I'm sure by now everyone knows what an iceberg chart is, but just in case you somehow don't, it's a chart that lists obscure information from most well-known to least well-known of a certain subject, and is an iceberg because, yeah. Now, this is, like I said, AN Elder Scrolls Iceberg, because there's actually a good handful of these. Some of them range from a little too detailed, just a little bit, to a little too sparse, to a little too much. So I cobbled together one out of a few and added my own stuff for some personal flavor. So without further ado, let's go to the top. Elder Scrolls 1 through 5. As this is the first entry, it should be the simplest. These are the main entries to the series, starting with Elder Scrolls Arena, then Daggerfall, then Morrowind, then Oblivion, and where we still are 10 years later, Skyrim. ESO, Elder Scrolls Online. This is definitely the most well-known spin-off of the series. It's the MMORPG Elder Scrolls. It's set far, far, far in the past for every other game, and keeping up with it is nigh impossible, because it just is never not making new expansions. Seriously, I'm not even joking. This isn't even written down. I just really cannot keep up with this game. I would love to, but holy hell, I don't have that much money. Who does? Elder Scrolls 6 Never. Yeah. This one's pretty simple. It's been 10 years since Skyrim came out, and all we have so far is they scanned in Skyrim Grandma and this trailer that showed absolutely nothing that was shown off a couple years ago. Alright, moving on to Skyrim bug jars. Yeah, this one's a little weird. See, all around Skyrim there's these, bugs in jars, and if you move their models around, you can see, runes carved into the bottoms of the lids of the jars. And this just sent the community into a massive conspiracy hunt, which apparently linked this to some secret plot lines or the end of the world or conspiracies in both our world and the video game. I don't know, probably something about lizard people or whatever. Odd to say the least. Alright, now we're moving on to the Empire. This one is so high up for obvious reasons. It's, a pretty basic facet of the series. It's the Empire, the governing body in most of the Elder Scrolls. Started by the actual God Emperor, Tiber Septim, when he used his anime protagonist powers in a fucking mech to take over all of Tamriel. It was going pretty strong till Elder Scrolls Oblivion, where his bloodline was ended in what is still the saddest moment in the entire series. And by Skyrim, the Empire's fractured and in a lot of trouble, hence the broken Imperial Dragon. Now we're moving on to Elder Scrolls Blades. This is probably the second most known Elder Scrolls spin-off. It's the mobile phone spin-off of Elder Scrolls. And in my opinion, while suffering from the same shitty trappings as 99.99% of the mobile game market, it's actually really good. It takes place a handful of decades before Skyrim, and you play as an ex-blade tasked with rebuilding your hometown and stopping an Ayleid Lich dickhead from coming back from the dead. In full swing at least. Alright, now we're moving on to Khajiit chests. So I don't actually see that many people talk about this. I'm sure people know about it, but just I don't see it discussed that much. See, in Skyrim, all the vendors use hidden chests. They're usually nearby, out of bounds, in the ground, behind a wall, somewhere floating in the void. You could use the good old wooden plate glitch, but without, breaking the game, you can't reach these stuff. You can't rob these vendors. Except for the vendors in the Khajiit caravans. See, all of their chests are located somewhere outside or in, depending if the city's not walled, the cities that they, they stop at. And they're just placed a little too close to the ground for some reason. So there's these very specific spots where you can just sort of reach through the dirt and rob a bunch of cats. So with that, we're moving on to our final entry on this level, Dragons Not Dragons. So I'm sure you've all heard about this from, randos on the internet, but no. By standard fantasy terms, dragons in Skyrim are not dragons, they're wyverns, pretty sure I got that right, which are usually considered a type of dragon anyway, but I feel like people are overlooking, something about this. Who cares? These are the dragons in the Elder Scrolls. That's just how they are. Everything in the Elder Scrolls has a twist like that. The dragons are also like 1/1,000,000th of a god, and are also probably sexless, so why are we getting so caught up in the semantics? I don't know. But with that, we gotta move on to a layer deeper. And here we are on the next level of the iceberg. Now, bad YouTube lore. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The Elder Scrolls has a deep, maybe too deep for its own good, ocean of lore that fills the series. And while it falls into two categories, weird and complex, or easy to understand, but there's a lot of it. So, of course, people go to YouTube to seek out some answers, and, well, YouTube just doesn't have such a great track record on lore. Bad interpretations, overconfidence but with a lack of understanding, and just a plain good handful of made-up stuff have really poisoned the well. Hell, please do not even take anything I say as gospel. Blue people. Oh boy, I'm gonna try not to rant here, but see, the term blue people came from ESO's Morrowind expansion, which featured, well, blue people in it. See, these just don't look like Elder Scrolls elves. They're really generic looking, but that's actually how all elves look in every ESO trailer. I mean, look at this piece of work. What the hell is this Lord of the Rings shit? The thing is, this is not even how they look like in-game. These characters look like Elder Scrolls elves in ESO. So it's really fucking weird. And I really hate it, honestly. I mean, I just want to see, my beloved Elder Scrolls elves in a very cool cinematic trailer, but that's not going to happen. My assumption is they try to do this to bring in more of a general audience and not scare them away with, creativity and uniqueness, but hey, whatever. The Dwemer missing. Yeah, of course this one had to be on the iceberg somewhere. I mean, it just had to be. See, as I'm sure you know, the Dwemer were a highly advanced race capable of building magic robots, and one day they disappeared, leaving behind a lot of ruins. It's not really a mystery why they disappeared. See, during the 1,000,000th Chimer versus Dunmer war, while the soon-to-be Dunmer forces were closing in on the Dwemer for building a massive mecha god, Lord Kagernak, the architect of the project, freaked out and started smacking around the heart of Lorkhan, and then every Dwemer disappeared. So it's a mystery why they disappeared, but we still know why, if you catch my cold. Alright, now we're on to Creeper. So, Barbas, Clavicus Vile's dog, who is also a part of him, for some reason, back in Morrowind, decided to turn himself into a scamp. Normal activity, and then he lived in a frat house full of shirtless orcs and was a willing participant in Morrowind gold exploits. Yeah. Oblivion on the PSP. Yes, the spin-off that never happened, sadly. See, despite what people say, this wasn't going to be a bad port, no. It was actually going to be a spin-off taking place alongside the events of Oblivion, which just sounds really cool, and I'm mad it was cancelled, but hey, we have some sort of not really playable builds of it, so I mean, there's that. And wall climbing in Daggerfall. Yeah, I think this one's a little self-explanatory. In Daggerfall, you could climb walls. I'd like to do that again, Todd. Please and thank you, though I don't know how you would implement that properly. Try it anyways. I don't know. Alright, and now we're on to Redguard. Oh, Redguard. See, you have probably at least heard of this game. See, this is Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, and it was actually the first 3D Elder Scrolls game, and yes, I am here to tell you what you may have heard and didn't believe. No, this is not an RPG, actually. See, it's a Tomb Raider clone where you play as Cyrus the Redguard in what is currently the second farthest back game in the timeline, actually. Now, if you go looking for Elder Scrolls Redguard, you might notice one thing. People think this game is, well, not very good, and frankly, I disagree. I mean, yeah, it's clunky as hell, don't get me wrong, it totally is. But, so is Tomb Raider 1 through 3, and people still love those. But outside of the clunky complaint, which is a valid one, People say it's bad because it's not an RPG, and well, that's just a stupid complaint. It's a spin-off for a reason, guys. I can't be the only one who thinks it's pretty cool for a series to have spin-offs that gameplay-wise are just completely different, but, share the same setting, of course. Anyway, if you like action games and low poly models and can put up with some clank and jank, you should give Redguard a try. Or you can at least watch all of the cutscenes on YouTube, which, they're fully animated. You gotta appreciate that at least. And, of course, listen to its amazing theme song, which is just, what if nautical was a word? Alright, moving on to the many Maiks. For those who don't know, Maik the Liar is a reoccurring Elder Scrolls character who basically just makes subtle, or in Oblivion's case, not so subtle commentary on the game series. Except in Morrowind, which was his first appearance, and while he did make some commentary, you could just ask him fourth wall breaking questions that he would, then just call you a weirdo for. He was also partially, at least, integral to a Daedric quest. Now, some people have made theories saying that he is actually the aspect of some Khajiit god whose name I forgot. And while I could totally see Bethesda doing that, right now all we have to go off of is that apparently every generation his family has a Maik the Liar. But how can we know that's true? He is a liar after all. Alright, moving on to horse armor. See, Bethesda made a DLC for Oblivion called, horse armor, and it gave your armor a horse. It costs like $2.50, and Bethesda has been made fun of ever since. But they've taken it in strides, and with Skyrim Anniversary Edition, they brought back the horse armor. But they really never should have been made fun of to the extent that they were for it. See, it was somewhat of a test DLC. DLC was being, popularized at the time, and Bethesda had never really made any yet. They made expansions, but those were, you had to go out and buy your own disc for that, They never made downloadable content that you had to pay for. So they threw together something in like 3 minutes and wanted to sell it for pocket change, but Microsoft wouldn't let them. They said the lowest that they could go was $250, and the rest was history. Alright, now we're finally onto the last entry in this layer, other races. See, you have the playable races in the Elder Scrolls, your Redguards, Bretons, Nords, Imperials, Argonians, Khajiits, Bosmer, Altmer, Dunmer, and Orsimer, and I'm sure we're all well acquainted with them. But holy hell, there's a lot more. A lot of them are extinct, like the dwemer, which I'm sure you know. The aliens, and then there's the contested races, like goblins, which even within lore, it's debated by scholars whether we should actually consider them like a people, or just some monsters that have opposable thumbs. And I simply can't name off the rest of them, but there's some more notable races, like Slodes, giant evil slug people who actually unified Tamriel by unleashing a plague on it that killed, like, some ridiculous number, like, over half of the population. So what was left of them kicked the Slodes' asses and sent them to an archipelago off the coast. Then there's the Sea Elves, which I promise are not mermaids, and they live on another series of archipelagos a lot farther away. Alright, let's slow down. Can you tell I've been recording for a long time because I'm just trying to rush through this final part. So there's also the Fox people of Blackmarsh, who, even though I'm pretty sure I've been saying their name correctly for years at this point, I'm not going to say, because I don't want to say it and be made fun of in the slight chance that I'm wrong, so I'm just not going to say it. I'm just going to put the name up here. They were from Blackmarsh, but unlike the Argonians, they're all dead. And then there's the Akaviri races. There's monkey people and a race of tigers, and yes, that is different from the Khajiit, I swear, because their leader is probably a dragon person who was a tiger man who turned himself into a dragon. And then there was also apparently humans on Akavir, who are maybe dead, possibly still alive. I don't know, but I do know that I am done with this recording, and we are moving on to the next layer. Alright, now we're on to the next layer of the iceberg, and here's our first entry, Radiant AI. So despite what all of the funny, amazing Oblivion memes will tell you, Oblivion's AI system is actually really smart, especially for the time. Characters have daily routines and jobs to go to, not just them walking around a certain path all day, then triggering an idle animation related to where they are. I mean, they do that too, but see, they can travel pretty damn far for these daily routines. They can go to different cities, different towns, and if you learn these routines, with the times and dates related, you can bet you'll find them. But the coolest thing is, they have goals. Characters will go after certain items and things completely independent of your actions. Maik, for instance, is looking for calipers because, I don't know, comedy. And while it's pretty unlikely that he'll find them on his travels, if you leave some out on his path, he'll get them. And that goes for every NPC. But unlike Maik, most of these NPCs are in areas where they can actually meet their goals. So, like I said, they'll do this all on their own. And on top of that, well, we have the infamous generated conversations. And while it's fun to laugh at them when they, end up making no sense, a good portion of the time they do. And while still pretty clunky, it's a lot more immersive than hearing the same conversation a million times in Skyrim. And before we move on to the next entry, I gotta include that before Oblivion was finished, the Radiant AI was even smarter, but it was toned down because it was too smart. See, the AIs kept realizing the fastest way to get what they want is usually just to kill somebody for it. So the AIs kept murdering each other to get some yarn or something. Alright, now we're on to end of the Third Era sucked. I mean, just, think about it. Sure, every time in every Elder Scrolls game, the world will have some sort of turmoil. I mean, they didn't call Tamriel the Arena twice in the entire series for no reason. But at the end of the Third Era, it was just especially bad for the people that lived in it. I mean, over the course of only 44 years, the Empire was taken over by a Lich for 10 years, who sold out the Empire's battle mage training facilities. After that, for 12 years, there was massive political strife in Iliac Bay, which only ended after a mysterious event involving multiple giant magic god robots and a lot of dead people. But hey, let's not forget about the plague that swept across the entire province of Morrowind, which only subsided after a god was killed, which led to the entire fundamental cultural and governmental systems of Morrowind being upheaved. But hey, a full-scale blood moon was mostly stopped, I guess. But to cap all of that off, the entire empire was at risk, as the bloodline that ruled it, which was started by a god emperor, was ended in a single night to cap off the beginning of the end of the world. But I mean, hey, at least it was stopped after a bunch of cities were wrecked and a bunch of people died. Yeah. Though, it's not like things got much better in the Fourth Era either. Now we're on to Orcs Were Monsters. See, one thing I love about this series is that most of the time, they don't try to hide outdated information or just cover it up with a handy-dandy retcon. No. They usually just face it head-on. See, in Elder Scrolls I Arena, orcs weren't playable because, well, in, generic fantasy worlds, orcs at a baseline are usually just mindless, violent monster men. And so, when Oblivion came out, with literally 99% of the lore that's integral to today just not existing, and most, if not all of those amazing creative twists on fantasy ideas also not existing either, things were a lot more generic. So, of course, orcs were just monsters in that game. And in the manual, too. And the manual was supposed to have in-universe descriptions for the game's monsters. So the manual calls orcs just bigger goblins that are pretty stupid and very dangerous. Pretty rude if you ask me, and well, Bethesda seemed to think so too. So when it came time to explore more lore in Daggerfall, they made this a central plot point. Bethesda didn't just ignore what they had done and slapped it with a big old non-canon sticker. No, those in-universe explanations are still canon, and they existed due to the at-the-time racist views the Empire held against orcs, considering them to not really be a people and something more akin to goblins. Like I said, this would be a central plot point in Daggerfall, with one of the main players being King Gortwog, leader of Orsinium, who's portrayed as not only more of a decent person than most of the rulers in Iliac Bay, but highly intelligent too. He's simply fighting to create a home for his people and gain equal rights as the rest of the races of the Empire. And he succeeds, actually. Come a few years later, and boom, orcs are playable in Morrowind. And as for the orcs you fought in Arena, well, they were probably just bandits who happened to be orcs. What a nice guy, Gortwog. What can I say? You love to see it. And now we're on to Battlespire. Elder Scrolls Legends Battlespire, yeah. This came before the card game. This was actually the first ever spin-off of the Elder Scrolls, and while I said Redguard was the first truly, fully 3D Elder Scrolls, well, Battlespire introduced a lot of 3D as well. But what is Battlespire? Well, it plays very similar to the first two Elder Scrolls games, but the main difference is that it's not a massive open world, because its setting is in the Battlespire, a battle mage training grounds for the Empire that exists between dimensions for some reason, and unfortunately for you, today is the day Yeagar Tharn sold out the Battlespire to Mehrunes Dagon because he wanted to eliminate any threats to himself by having all the elite battle mages killed. So in RPG fashion, you gear up, find out what's going on, and you end up defeating Dagon. But there's a few more things of note for this game. For one, it was the first and only game for a while to involve the Soul Cairn and the Ideal Masters. They would only reappear again in Skyrim with the Dawnguard DLC. And I don't know, maybe while designing the more gothic and darker themed vampire DLC, they went back to Battlespire, because it is also notable for its art and music direction being a lot more darker and spooky, so to speak, than the other Elder Scrolls games. It also had multiplayer with deathmatch modes, and a few others, so yeah, it's safe to say Battlespire is pretty unique in terms of the series. Now we have Mankar's Oops. For somebody who's helping a Daedric prince take over the mortal realm, for somebody who's leading an entire cult dedicated to worship of a Daedric prince, for someone who orchestrated the entire assassination of the royal family, including the Emperor, for someone who, according to his book, is some kind of weird Elder Scrolls Antichrist or something, he sure did seem to not have any idea what he was talking about during his little "I'm gonna taunt the hero" speech. Mathala's Moonshadow? I mean, I guess I can see how you messed that up. Names seem pretty fitting. But Piriat's Quagmire? I mean, come on, dude, you should probably get this stuff. But, I mean, it's for Mina and Piriat, nobody really cares about them anyways, but where I draw the goddamn line, Mankar, where I draw the goddamn line is Meridia's Cold Harbor. That's like the direct opposite, bro. How did you fuck that up? Come on, dude, this is why you're dead. Come on, shape up. Alright, let's talk about Daggerfall Unity. It's amazing. Have you ever wanted to play Daggerfall, but it's so unbelievably old and crusty it scares you? Well, that's true for a lot of people. So, install Daggerfall Unity. It's Daggerfall rebuilt in the Unity engine with every single quality of life change you could ask for, along with mod support and improved and great-looking graphics. And, on top of that, crazy customization in your settings, too. It is just above and beyond expectation, and anybody who worked on it is just a legend, if you ask me. Okay, this one's pretty simple, guys. Bosmer used to, and probably still do in certain remote areas of Valenwood, eat people. Listen, they're not just doing it for fun, I hope. See, Bosmer aren't supposed to eat or harm nature in any way, and, well, that sort of turns into ritualistic cannibalism when you defeat an enemy. I know that sounds, pretty kind of very gross, but I mean, Dunmer, they ride giant fleas, so, who's the real gross one, Now we're on our second to last entry in this level, and it's games hinting at each other. Bethesda does this a lot, actually. From somehow getting most of the future game names in the Redguard intro, I don't even understand that. Seriously, some of these games wouldn't come out for years, but I guess that's just dedication, Bethesda. And then there's Oblivion, where in the Morrowind Tribunal expansion, there's a doomsday cult that talks about how in the next few years, the end of the world would happen, and it would involve Oblivion invading Mundus. And a little more depressingly is that in Morrowind's Blood Moon expansion, there's this guy you meet in a hole, and he will tell you the future if you've beaten Blood Moon. And he says the exact words the Emperor would say in the Oblivion intro. And that connected to some Oblivion mini-arg, I don't know, we're not talking about that. Before the first trailer dropped. So now we're just waiting for to see what hint was in Skyrim for Test 6. I don't know. Now our last entry, the Bethesda Character Relocator. Trademark. See, by the end of the game, you're pretty powerful, and well, there's got to be a reason why the Nerevarine can't show up to help the hero of Kvatch stop the Oblivion crisis. Well, there's a reason. For most main characters, at least. See, the first two, the Eternal Champion and the Agent of Daggerfall, are apparently just probably dead. I suppose that's up to you, but come to Oblivion, and the Nerevarine also apparently took a trip to Akavir, and I guess that reason's also up to you. And of course, by the end of Oblivion, the hero of Gotch gets relocated into being a Daedric prince. So we actually do see them again. They just look and sound and act and smell probably like Sheogorath. So, they're still there. They mention it, actually, if you look at the dialogue. But hey, this level of the iceberg's done. I'm getting off.
Hello, everyone. It's me, Euclid. Yuku class Dunmer. Anyway, I'm going to be helping Snowycity out. So sit back, relax, and let's get to level 4. So here we are on the 4th level of the iceberg. And now things are just going to get a little odder. First up is towers. There are these things in the Elder Scrolls called towers. Some are literal towers, while others are not towers at all. See, these towers hold up the universe in the Elder Scrolls. You may be familiar with a few like the White Gold Tower or the Throat of the World, but there's more like Red Mountain, the Numidium, or even the Crystal Lake Law. There's a few more with various levels of detail known about them, and each of them have few functions and abilities on top of the whole supporting reality thing. But see, there's an issue. Unfortunately for the people of Mundus, a good handful of them are broken, so to speak. See, each tower has something called stone that powers it, and well, a few of these stones are DOA, leaving towers like the White Gold Tower, Crystal-like Law, and Red Mountain / the Numidium inactive. And it's up in the air about a few others, but to make it simple, most of the towers are likely deactivated, and that doesn't spell good news for when they need to be activated to hold up the world. Now, on a similar note, the Thalmor, yeah, everyone's favorite allegory, are pretty well known for being evil, but on top of the all-known well-evil things they like to do, their main motive is that they would like to end the universe. Now, some people think that they plan to do so by shutting down any remaining towers, and some people seem to think they plan to do this by retroactively unexisting Lorcan. So let's hope General Tullius wasn't bluffing about not being so sure if the Thalmor can be considered real allies. Now onto the Travels trilogy, the almost forgotten Elder Scrolls games. See, way back in the 2000s, when the idea of mobile gaming outside of the Game Boy line of handhelds was becoming a reality, it shook the market up in a lot of weird ways. And one of the things to come from it was the Nokia N-Gage. And it was a total flop, but you may actually know about it nowadays from a lot of the videos made on it in the past few years, and if you've seen them, you might have noticed an Elder Scrolls game called Shadowkey. Now, one game doesn't make a trilogy, but that's actually why there's two others that are usually glossed over, and that's Dawnstar and Stormhold. These two are often overlooked because Shadowkey is actually good and interesting, and these two are bad. See, Shadowkey is about shadow magic, a really interesting subject in the Elder Scrolls, and is not talked about enough. Plus, it's in 3D compared to the other ones, and has some actual characters in concrete setting, and a really interesting villain, Umbra Keth. Plus, the plot ties back into the main games with the person to set off the events of Shadowkey, being Jagar Tharn. But see, the other two are basically the same game with a few different changes like setting, story, and sprites, which sounds like a lot of differences, but it really isn't in this case. In Dawnstar, you play a member of the Dawnstar City Guard, going out to fight some strange people called the Ice Tribe, and some related monsters, all of which have never been mentioned again, and while doing so, you have to root out a traitor from the City Guard, but in the end, you get some powerful ice magic at least. Now, Stormhold is at least a bit more interesting plot-wise. You're sent to the strange and horrific Stormhold prison of Blackmarsh, that's ran by Warden Quintus Varus, who's become obsessed with finding the legendary Stormhold crystal, which can, according to him, cleanse the world of evil, but in his insane obsession to find it, he's made the prison into a hellscape for anyone inside. He forces the prisoners to mine endlessly looking for the crystal, which just expands the prison more, turning it into an unending labyrinth, while allowing the guards to be ruthless and cruel towards the prisoners. It's become so bad that the prisoners, the guards and the warden himself included, have twisted into physically corrupted monsters. So, of course, you as the hero must deal with that mess. So like I said, the only thing the game's really got going for it is its basic plot, because outside of that, it plays exactly the same as Dawnstar, excluding the unique crystal item system, and the game is only remembered by this one guy who's been making a webcomic based off of it for way too long. Anyway, Bethesda should still port these to PC. At least they're still part of the series, and though technically there is a fourth one, but that's an Oblivion demake for Java phones, and it's horrible, so I'm not counting that. Now, we're on to the Eye of Argonia, a sadly cancelled sequel to the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, which would have seen Cyrus return as the protagonist to venture deep into Blackmarsh to find the legendary Eye of Argonia. It didn't make it very far into development, so we don't know much about it other than its short summary. But it can be assumed that it would have involved using the jewel to unlock the mysterious lost city of Blackmarsh, seeing as that's the stated use for the Eye. Though the events of the game may still be canon, due to later legends of Cyrus's life still hunting the jewel down, so there's that at least. Now, we're on to mantling. Mantling in the Elder Scrolls is one of those high-level concepts with a lot of nuance and mystery surrounding it, in both the universe's lore and the idea to us as the player. But to put it in the most simple terms, it's the act of becoming a pre-existing god. So yes, it's not your average ascension. Walk like them until they must walk like you is the quote you'll hear to describe the act of mantling. It's a rather deep subject with many figures in lore being brought into question of who or if they mantled some god, a concrete example being the hero of Kvatch, who at the end of the Shivering Isles mantled Sheogorath. It's unknown how exactly it affects your identity, a person's mind, soul, and place within Mundus, melding together with another. Is it some sort of hostile takeover with the name, powers, and status of a god? Just trading hands, or is it more of a proper merger between the two entities? I'd say it's the latter, because we see Sheogorath again during the events of Oblivion, both in Blades and more importantly, in Skyrim, where he looks similar to his previous look, likely not bearing any of the features of your hero of Kvatch. And during his quest, he says the famous lines, "You are the best septim that ever rolled." Well, except for that Martin fellow, but he turned into a dragon god. And then his next lines would go on to cement that he remembers Oblivion, which is what more people point to, but I think the Martin line is more indicative of how mantling works. He's talking to probably the worst emperor to ever reign, because he was insane and cruel, and Sheogorath loves that kind of stuff, so it makes sense that he still felt the need to rate Martin above him, and who's probably the complete opposite of Pelagius the Mad. Now, I understand he's the mad god, but he could have chosen a whole load of emperors that were actually good. Martin's dad, for instance, or why not Tiber Septim himself? Because he's a proper merger of the hero of Kvatch and Sheogorath. And of course, the hero of Kvatch would say their dearly departed friend Martin was the greatest emperor ever. Now on to They Gutted Skyrim. This one is pretty simple. Each Elder Scrolls game since Daggerfall has gotten a little more streamlined. This is good in some aspects, like removing some of the confusing, useless skills, like literally all of the language skills from Daggerfall, but it can also be bad. Very bad, in fact, like with Skyrim. The removal of hand-to-hand is a real playstyle, and the removal of medium armor altogether, despite mentioning it in-game, are some notable cuts. Along with just a lot of missing artifacts, cut magic types, and so few armor choices, leaves Skyrim feeling pretty barren to those who have played the older games. Although with Skyrim Anniversary Edition, a lot of that has been fixed. Some things fixed better than others, but most things have been covered. Hand-to-hand is back. Loads of new armor to craft and special armor to quest for. The return of a bunch of missing artifacts and weapon types plus a good handful of new spells leaves Skyrim finally being a lot more up to snuff. So hey, a happy ending. And we end this layer with the most simple entry of them all. Savior's Hide. Always ranges from male looking to absolutely disgusting. And with that short entry, level 4 is complete. Snowycity, my dear friend, thank you so much for having me in this video.
Alright, now we're on to level 5, and let's just jump right into it. Vivek is a weirdo. Yeah, you know Vivek, living god, the legend, warrior, poet, professional backstabber, professional at redeeming himself by being funny looking, and professional at answering questions nobody asked, which leave only more questions. So, what do you do when you achieve a status higher than most gods? Well, you go have a fun time with Molag Bal, I guess. And when you're done, or about halfway through, if I remember correctly, you take his business with you, and you use it as a spear. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's Molag right there. Anyway, we move on to the superior god.
Arius, god of fire.
Sure, he was only mentioned in Arena once before the 9 Divines were even established, and in text most people didn't see or was quickly forgotten after they saw it. But, I mean, he rules a volcano! Sure, it's an obscure volcano on a small island nobody cares about, and he has his followers throw children into it or he'll kill them by erupting the volcano, but I mean, he's
Arius, god of fire.
What can I say? He's just the champ. And now we're on to a much more real topic. Are the Daedra really evil? At first it seems obvious. Yes, that's sort of the whole point, but when you look at it deeper, it's not so cut and dry. For one, some Daedra aren't even really that bad, like at all. Like Meridia, hell, her whole shtick isn't far from what the followers of Stendarr believe. And then there's Azura, who's just wholly worshipped by the Dunmer as a good and holy god. She can be a bit wrathful at times, but then again, so is Talos. Then some Daedra can't really help the way they are. Malakath is just straight up a tragedy of a god, and he is worshipped by the orcs as a holy figure too. And then there's Mehrunes Dagon, who is created the way he is, being the embodiment of destruction, but on top of that, he was the embodiment of change and revolution. So he's not all bad, but then on the other hand, you have Molag Bal, and well, he's just cartoonishly evil, so I don't know. Anywho, we're on to Quintus Varus was right. You just heard who Varus was from Euclid, so I'll skip the introduction and just say, yes, sorta. He is correct about what the Stormhold Crystal does. He was just wrong about its range and potency. It could not suck up all the evil from the Empire, but it was strong enough to suck up all the corruption he made in his prison. So, it did work. So, he was close at least. Alright, now we're on to the best Elder Scrolls character. Unmatched, unrivaled, undefeated, and unstoppable. Amalexia, garbage. Talos, even worse. Martin, don't even mention him in the same sentence as the Mock Turtle. Yeah, This dude is just way too hard to discover Easter egg in Battlespire. You have to jump off a bridge or something, and then you can talk to this massive turtle. But look into his eyes and tell me he's not the best Elder Scrolls character. You can't. You just can't. And sure, he's just an Alice in Wonderland reference, but ESO referenced the mock turtles, so he's canon. Now, I'm going to lump both shadow magic and water magic together here because they're both deceptively powerful. Let's start with water magic. See, water magic allows its users to control water akin to some Avatar waterbending kind of stuff. It lets you use water as a weapon by controlling vast amounts of it, or just turning yourself into a magic fire hose. But there's a deeper power to it, because water in the Elder Scrolls is memory. And when someone dies, their memories and their knowledge of the world become water. So when someone has a true understanding of water magic, they have access to everything. They can know deep arcane secrets of long-dead mages and important political secrets of dead emperors, making a master of water magic insanely dangerous, and may only be outranked by a master of shadow magic. While shadow magic in most fantasy worlds would allow you to turn into a shadow and move unseen or something, in the Elder Scrolls it does a lot more. While it can likely do all that too, most importantly, a Master of Shadow has the power to rival an Elder Scroll. See, because shadows are more than just the absence of light. They're a reflection of what could be, whatever that means. So basically, a Master Shadow Mage can affect reality around them, affect the past, the present, and the future, as well as alternative versions of reality, whatever that means. And it also allows them to enhance their bodies and minds so they can just be superhuman too, or something. And on top of that, they can make statues with shadow magic, the most important thing they can do out of all of this. And with that, folks, we are done with the short level 5, though I think the upcoming levels are going to be kind of short as well. We're getting to the end, you know. Alright, now we're on to level 6, and we got 3 more levels, so let's get moving. Alright, so now we got Night Mother is Mathala is Vivek. So this one is sorta, could be true in a disconnected jumble mess sort of a way. Okay, so there's this theory that both within lore and within the community that the Night Mother is actually Mathala, seeing as the Dark Brotherhood was made only after the Morag Tong was banished from everywhere except Morrowind, leading them to stop worshipping Mathala and instead worship Vivek. So, the idea is that Mathala made up the story of the Night Mother to start a new Assassin's Guild, which makes sense, except that the bodies of the Night Mother and her kids are seen in later games. As well as in Daggerfall, there's a sect of the Brotherhood who actually worship Mathala outright. So why would she allow an unneeded fracture like this to happen if in the end they're worshipping the same being, you know, herself? But in the other camp, the Night Mother stories just don't add up. For one, there's a few stories for who she was, and the most common one, she was just some Morag Tong living in Bravil who had kids with Sithis. And the other one, which was apparently an interview with the Night Mother herself, she was a member of the Thieves Guild, and actually the Dark Brotherhood was an offshoot of the Thieves Guild the whole time. As well as her body's just not matching up, but that's likely an oversight. But like, Todd, what happened to her body? Did her dead body grow skin over the past 200 years or what? Now, if I'm to be honest, the whole Vivek thing was kind of a joke, but I've seen people put this forward as a thing in the past, so I suppose the idea is, seeing that according to the doctrine of the Tribunal, Mathala is the anticipation of Vivek, and the Morag Tong can only legally operate within Morrowind. Also, assuming that the Night Mother is Mathala, that maybe in some sort of 27D chess move, Vivek is the one who set all this up to, I guess, have an Assassin's Guild reach across the Empire. For some reason, that would be important to him, I guess. Alright, now we're on to the Blind God. See, when you go into Aetherius to get the Mantella in Daggerfall, you need to fight your way through this weird-ass place they built in Aetherius to protect it. And for some reason, there is a god in there called the Blind God. He plays a part in protecting the Mantella, I guess. He's just a big-ass skull with smaller skulls that he controls. You also find Sheogorath standing in his eye socket, and he claims that he's had dealings with the Blind God before, and that the Blind God has a bad jealousy streak, and is apparently pretty full of himself. Alright, now we're on to Lig.
What the hell is this?
Jesus, Lig is a whole thing, but luckily for us, a lot of the current info is out of game, meaning that I only have to mention it and not talk at length about it. Thankfully, because if I did, this would be the longest part of the iceberg. Anyway, Lig is apparently a continent that predates Tamriel, and in fact, Tamriel is its afterimage, whatever that means. So apparently during the Dawn era, it was ruled by an evil empire of drow, believe it or not, and its people were being crushed under the heel of the drow's tentacle, and the people were only freed after the Magna Gi created Mehrunes Dagon to overthrow the empire, which he did when he raised the Red Legion and fought Molag Bal, who was a drow at the time, and the chief among them. And during this war, Mehrunes Dagon decided to destroy the towers of Chim El Charig, which apparently destroyed Lig, and because of that, birthed Tamriel, as well as made Drow Molag into a being called the Ruddy Man. Now, with all the out-of-game stuff, apparently it still sort of exists, and you can still go there by moving sideways, and people have done this and gone there, even though it said it was destroyed. I also think City Face is there, maybe too. I don't remember. There's a bunch of other stuff. God, why is Lig like this? Why? Like, just be normal. Anyway, we're on to the Clockwork City. Originally visited in Morrowind, it's a weird domain of Sothasil, where he would carry out his weird-ass experiments like building magic dinosaur robots, and machines to build the magic dinosaur robots, and of course building people, and of course replacing his body parts slowly with his own brand of magic machines, which are totally different from dwemer machines, I swear. Now, I don't know if maybe it was said somewhere in Morrowind, but I think most people's impression of the Clockwork City during that time was that it was just an off-limits place, probably underground somewhere in Morrowind. I don't know. Well, wrong. We were all wrong if that was our impression. It's actually a dimension separate from, this world, made by Sothasil, but it also exists in the real world, too, apparently. And it's a globe, and no bigger than a good-sized netch, according to the wiki. And you're basically magically moved and shrunk down into it while entering the Clockwork City, and is also the size of an entire world. Now we're finally on to Everything is a Dream. I'm going to be brief, so listen. Don't do acid and write important lore for a video game series, while being inspired by Hindu, Buddhism, and a slew of more monotheistic religions and New Age spiritualism. Okay, so, everything is a dream within this thing called the Godhead, and that's okay. The last Dragonborn still slew the World Eater and defeated the first Dragonborn. The hero of Kvatch still saved Mundus with their friend Martin. The Nerevarines still got justice for their friend stabbing them in the back in their former life. It all happened, and it's all a dream. But that's okay, because when a dream is the only thing there is, it's the only thing that's real. Okay, this is the second to last level. It's 9:40 a.m. I just really would like to finish this. Okay, let's go. The world is ending. A fun topic to start, I know. Well, I sort of accidentally had Euclid say this earlier, but outside of all the other apocalyptic events that happen every few years on Nirn, a much greater threat is brewing. The towers are running out. Those things that hold up reality, yeah, well, there's only a few of them left. And if they go out, Mundus goes out. But that leads into our next entry, which I haven't, spoiled yet. You can escape the end. Yeah, it's apparently possible to just not get caught up in the whole end of the world situation. See, the universe in the Elder Scrolls is eventually supposed to end. That's just the natural cycle. And then another universe starts. These cycles are called kalpas. And more than a few have just somehow made the jump from one end of the world to the start of another. Like all of the Redguards, or well, their ancestors, the Yakutans. Yeah, they just somehow made the jump from previous Kalpa to this one at the beginning of it. I mean, good on them. And then apparently a single person can do that too, because Umaril's father, you remember Umaril, the large guy? Yeah, his dad apparently just made a jump from a previous Kalpa. I mean, sure, why not? And now we're moving on to Chim.
And I personally chimmed in it myself.
Okay, so Chim is a state of being in the Elder Scrolls. that makes the person who achieves it unbound by any laws and limitations, quote-unquote. You can only achieve this by reaching some sort of understanding of the universe of the Elder Scrolls and your place in it. Now, if we take a step off the beaten path and step into let's just go with that, general truths. The understanding you must reach is you sort of just have to come to the realization that everything is a dream, and you sort of have to just look at that and say, yeah, everything is a dream, but I am still me, I still matter. And then boom, you can beat Goku. You become this Omega God who can change reality and history at will. And I think the only known people to do this are Vivek and Tiber Septim. But anyway, if you can't accept the fact that you're in a dream, then you sort of just get deleted from reality. Sounds like a skill issue to me. But anyway, we're on to Talos is Many. Now, this one is a whole thing. It's basically a mess of facts within the series, conflicting beliefs within the series, which are all probably correct somehow, tiny random notes and bits of dialogue, and a whole lot of generally accepted truth, which people fight over how to interpret these truths. Okay, so there's these things called oversouls. It's a soul, a spirit, or whatever, made up of other souls, so to speak. And the god, Talos, is believed to be one of them, and not merely just an ascended state of Tiber Septim. Alright, see, that wasn't so bad sounding, but now we're on to the point where it starts to get all, the point when you start to talk about what is, Talos made of. Well, for one, Tiber Septim, but also apparently Ysmir, who is also not just a title in this case, but is also probably a title, but is also the Underking. Yes, that Underking is apparently Ysmir. And then, Hajilti Earlybeard is somewhere in there, and then you factor in Tiber Septim's identity is a bit mysterious in the fact that people say he is an Ord, and then they say he's from Atmora, but who's still living in Atmora? That place sucks. And then apparently he's actually a Breton, and I mean, Tiber Septim was also a Dragonborn, making him have the soul of a dragon, making him a part of this mess, but also, apparently, he mantled Lorkhan, too, or he mantled just the Shezarene aspect of Lorkhan. I don't know. Anyway, let's please move on. And to follow that up, we're going with Kata, the only better thing to follow it up on, and I'm calling it Kata, not Coda. Okay, so all this whack-ass lore, the crazy stuff, the godheads, the chims, the Vivek and his dong spear, that's all from the brain of Michael Kirkbride, who apparently did drugs when he wrote, probably all of that, but that's besides the point. Michael Kirkbride is a key player in turning the Elder Scrolls into the world we know it is now. Turning it from a fantasy game with people who are apparently related to cat people but don't look like cat people, and also there's lizard people, into the weird mind-bending lore that we have today, what with, the godheads and the chims and the dong spears and all that. But he doesn't work at Bethesda anymore, and that's fine. He went on to write for Minecraft story mode. But see, even after his tenure at Bethesda, he still likes to expand the lore of the Elder Scrolls in his own way, his own completely unrestricted way. So, Kata is a story he wrote that takes place on Masser in the 5th era, and it's odd to say the least. It's also like a commentary on how the Elder Scrolls lore should not be restricted by canon. It should be a community thing, SCP Foundation, whatever. And thus came the phrase Kata makes it canon that people, jokingly slap on anything like a car mod for Skyrim. But yeah, so his outside works are disputedly canon. I mean, for good reason. He doesn't work there anymore, but, that's I definitely will admit that I don't know how I feel about all of his works. I feel that they're definitely something to keep in mind, as well as I've drawn from ideas proposed in his other out-of-game works, and I definitely like to think some of his ideas are canon because they're cool, I don't know. But my favorite work he's done for the series were the illustrations anyway. Now we're on to Elder Scrolls Baby Rules, the final entry in this level. I put this down here because I knew I would need something to keep me sane while writing everything else that I just spoke of. I'm sure you know the most basic rule in the Elder Scrolls. Beast folk can't have kids with men and mer. Probably. But there's also, like, if an elf and a human have a baby, whatever the mother is, the child will most resemble, with some traits of the father's race, and obviously, I don't know, just their facial features in general. But then there's a rule you don't hear very often, and that's female elves can only give birth to, like, 4 kids ever, and it's usually, like, 2 or 3. Like, they just physically can't ever go past 4. I don't know why, but I do know this level is done. There's one more level left, thank God. So we're finally here at the end of the iceberg. Thank God. Let's just get on with it. They keep taking the Nerevarine shit. I mean, they really do. First in Skyrim, you can get an oddly depowered keening. You just find it on some dead Dunmer for the Mages College. And then comes along Skyrim Anniversary Edition, and then just boom, fucking everything. All of it. Everything that your Nerevarine had, now property of the Dragonborn, I guess. I had to come up with some convoluted excuse to make my Nerevarine still have this stuff. You know, whole interconnecting a series of stupidity to make sure my Nerevarine doesn't just lose everything they've ever owned. I mean, come on. Even the Nerevarine sword. That only belongs to one person. The Nerevarine. Nobody else gets it. It's their sword. Anyway, moving on. We have the Dragonborn kills the best test character. So in Morrowind there is the famous mud crab merchant, a talking mud crab who enjoys a nice bottle of booze while he does his trading. And he has a boatload of cash. And he talks. And is a pain in the ass to find the first time, but you'll always be able to find him after for some reason. Your brain just memorizes which tiny little rock island he's on. But now, see, in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, you can find a mud crab on Solstein named Old Salty. Now, unlike our good friend from Morrowind, Old Salty is an asshole and will attack you on sight. But on his body, you can find a good handful of gold, a gem, a tankard, something you might drink alcohol out of. Seems to me that these two may be one and the same. I mean, it would explain the gold and the tankard and the gem. But, see, Old Salty and the Mud Crab Merchant actually both have Elder Scrolls Legend cards for some reason. But, I mean, the Mud Crab Merchant in the card is kind of a different Mud Crab, as well as he's Southern for some reason.
Mud Crab Merchant! Read my lips! Mouth paws!
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they are the same, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe there's multiple Mud Crab Merchants. I don't know. Now we're on to Skyrim hasn't been ported that many times. And I mean, well, it just like it hasn't been. I mean, it's been ported a few times, but not nearly as many as people, like to make it out. You have the original PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and then you have the next-gen versions, and then you have the Skyrim Special Edition versions, and then you have the Switch port. I mean, if you want to count that as separate from the Special Editions. And now, obviously, for re-releases, yeah, you have more, but it's still nowhere near as many as fucking Resident Evil 4. Like, Jesus. There's like the original release, Gaudi Edition, Next Gen, Special Edition for the Switch, again, if you want to count that as something else. Skyrim Anniversary Edition, and oh, how could I forget Skyrim for the Alexa. Now, all of that put together, the ports, the re-releases, all that, combined, doesn't even touch Resident Evil 4, alright? So maybe, lean off Bethesda, unless they do it one more time. Then, I don't know, yell at them. But now we're on to the last entry in this iceberg. The Vestige is an anime OC. So yeah, holy shit, ESO will never stop. I mean, it's a good game. A great game, even. One of the best MMORPGs ever made. But, I don't know, just slow the hell down with the sheer feats of this motherfucker. Just listen to the list of the titles this hero gets. And reminder, this list is ever growing, because they will not slow down with these massive expansions. The Vestige, the savior of Tamriel, the hero of Cold Harbor, Meridia's champion, the High King's arrow, the Moon Hollowed, the hero of Hrothgar, champion of Vivek, savior of Somerset, Root Mender, champion of Aniquina, Nobody's allowed to correct me. I said it right. Don't lie. Even if I didn't say it right, I said it right. Nobody's allowed to correct me. If I see one of you do it, I swear to God. And then, Akazu. I mean, it's a dragon name. Maybe I didn't say that one right, but I mean, again, it's a dragon name. But again, it's a dragon name. I feel like that one especially means something. It indicates something. I don't know what it indicates, but it feels a little important that you get a goddamn dragon name. And this motherfucker has stopped numerous Daedric princes, sliced Molag Bal in half personally after using the power of the Amulet of Kings, has met, befriended, and fought a big-ass handful of gods. They've become a legendary hero in every culture on Tamriel, and some that aren't. They've helped rebuild kingdoms, they fought in the Three Banner War, and could have become the Emperor for a hot second. They've established a safe haven city inside Cold Harbor. They've joined the Sijic Order. Let me say that one again. They've joined the Sijic Order. They've fought dragons, too. Never forget that one. That one was kind of important. Like, goddamn, every single thing any of the other heroes have done, the Vestige has done also, in some way, shape, or form. Jesus, like, I get it. It's an MMORPG. You gotta keep making, the expansions, but, like, I don't know. Make one about owning a farm or something, guys, because, like, you can't keep this up. But anyway, with that rant done, the Elder Scrolls Iceberg, AN Elder Scrolls Iceberg, because, trust me, there's a bigger one out there, is finally finished. This is actually my second time recording this level. I didn't like the first one. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that took 7 months. Jesus. Yeah, so I've been individually editing each of the levels, and once I finish editing this one, I'm going to stitch them all together, because it would have been impossible for me to do it otherwise. Like, I'm not, the world's greatest editor. So yeah, that took way too goddamn long. I'm never doing this ever again.